Hey everybody, welcome to Spoon FPV. So today I'm going to show you how to build my quad. So this is my race rig right here, exactly as it's configured for race day. And the difference is going to be I'm going to use the new Wraith 32 amp or 35 amp ESCs, the new 32-bit ones. And I'm going to use a smaller camera than this. This is the Runcam Swift, and I'm going to use the Swift Mini in the build that I'm going to show you guys. But basically, it's going to be my new race build. Oh, and I'm using a different antenna than the Axie because basically you can't get them. So I wanted to list parts that everybody could get that were in stock. So was there anything that was challenging for stock? Oh, the XM Plus receiver was pretty challenging to get in stock. So I listed a couple options in the description below. So all the parts that I'm using are going to be in the description below. The XM Plus receiver is going to be the hardest one to find. If you can't get one, I guess the best bet is to pre-order one through Heli Direct or a couple of those. I put links for everything in the description. But anyway, so this is the build, like a finished one that I'm going to show you how to build. And this is the kit as it comes. And full disclosure here, Janry from Secret Weapon Drones actually sent me this for free, provided that I did a build video on it. And, you know, I need content, and if I wasn't going to do it anyhow, I wouldn't have accepted the deal. But because like I don't think it's fair to you guys to have vendors like decide what goes on my channel. So, this is something that. Well, anyway, I just want to be full disclosure. Like, I got this frame. There you go. All right, so this is the frame, and then the components that it comes with. And I will. Well, I guess I do have my scissors. So if you haven't seen my video on the parts for your first quad, it's based around this build, and I'll link it in the upper corner up there. It's basically everything that you're going to need for this build, and like why I would suggest those parts. So if you haven't already seen that video, I'll link it in up. Well, it's actually going to be this corner. I'll link it up in that corner, and I suggest that you watch that one as well, so that basically that I'm not just throwing a bunch of parts at you. That there's a reason behind the selection of everything here, and what you should improvise on and what you can't improvise on, because you're going to have issues. So, all right, the very first thing that I'm going to need from this kit is, well, none of this stuff. So, all right, in fact, the only thing that I'm going to use from this kit is going to be this top plate and these standoffs. Oh, that one's we got a runner. And okay, so the kit actually comes with those standoffs, and it comes with these 10mm extensions, so that you can actually you can make these a little longer if you want. I like a low profile build, so I use these standoffs by themselves, and if you build it the way that I show you, you'll be able to use the shorter standoffs as well. So it is a very tight build, which is why certain components are kind of critical to select the way that I do. Okay, and then not only does it come with that, the standoff extensions, but it comes with down. So if you use a longer extension, you're going to need a longer back plate, right? So it also comes with a longer back plate, which is pretty nice. I've never built one with the longer back plate. All of my builds have been with the short back plate on it. So the back plate is, oops, we got runners. So the back plate is actually this guy that everything that my VTX is mounted on. You probably can't see it really well in there because there's parts in the way and it's tight. But yeah, that's the back plate, and then these are the standoffs. So all right. So we're going to use these standoffs. We're going to use this back plate, this top plate, and then this is kind of an optional piece that you can screw on as well. This is it goes on the top plate back here, so you can use this You can use this to kind of protect your VTX, and you can use it to. You can also put a grommet on here and mount your pigtail for your XT60 through here, whatever your battery lead is, and yeah, I mean it's a pretty nice design piece that I don't generally use on my builds. So, but if you want to protect this seems to be okay in a crash, but if you want a little bit more protection, like this is a good piece to put on there. But we're not going to use it on this build, so. All right, so I'm going to put all of this extra stuff aside here because we're not using any of that. All right, so I like to use these Emax boxes, like, because I got a lot of their motors. Just throw. All right, so those don't roll away. So this is going to be my parts bin, so I'll throw stuff in there. All right, okay. Let's get this guy out of here. All right, so the front of the frame is, so this is the back. The part here that has the slit in it, because that's where your extension plate goes that goes on the back here. So this little, so it fits right down in there. And some guys like to sand these down and trim the edges, and I really don't get into that. I mean, it's like it's pretty well cut as it is. You're not gonna, like, whoever cuts these does a really nice job with them. So, all right, so this is going to be the bottom because it says the S is actually, I'm dyslexic, so this is really hard for me. So S, this is the right way. So this is the bottom of the frame. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take some of my 8mm, these are the 6mm ones. Yeah, no, I'm going to take some of my 6mm M3s, and I'll put one through the bottom here. And then these nylon standoffs that I have. So this is my first step in this. Just to make sure that I get the parts on there in the right direction. So there we go. One nylon standoff. And I dropped one on the floor and it disappeared forever. So when I was going through filming the other video of this, but anyway. Alright, so I'm going to put all these nylon standoffs on. Alright, and with that we've identified the bottom of this, and this is where our flight controller is going to go. So I'm going to take my flight controller out. I'm using the Betaflight F3 board. And again, I'll link in the other video for this, and I'll link all the parts for these in the description below. Alright, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this so that you can see it here. So okay, now the next step here is I'm going to tin a lot of the connectors on my board here. And I set, so we're using the MG Chemical solder and the Heiko soldering iron. You know, it's basically just good quality solder and good quality solder and a temperature controlled soldering iron is really important. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tin these connectors here. So I set mine to 750 is. That's a Fahrenheit, so alright. So watch me tin all of these. Oh, and one thing is the ground pads for these are, the ground plane is really heavy on this board, and it takes a lot of heat to get it warmed up. Now you don't, soldering is like robbing a bank. You kind of want to get in and you want to get out as quickly as possible. So, and I can't take credit for that. That's a Peter Schriepel quote, but I heard it and was like, you know, that's a perfect way to describe how to solder something. So, there, we're tinning all of these. And the reason I'm doing all this tinning ahead of time, is especially because that ground plane requires it's a large thermal sink, and when you start yeah, when you start having a bunch of wires on there, they actually start to draw heat away from the board and make the board a lot harder to work on. Okay, and a trick that I didn't do for you guys, because I use the aluminum standoffs and generally I don't care, is you can actually put it on the board itself to kind of hold it in place a little bit better while you're doing your soldering. But be careful not to melt your standoffs. Okay, so we've done our tinning, and I'm going to flip this over, and we're going to select our power levels here on this. So there is a connector here. Well, here, let me put it on the board the right way. This is the front, that's the front of the board. Okay, so we don't get confused. Okay, now I'm turning it sideways. Okay, there we go. So this section over here is your VTX voltage. So we're going to use a 5-volt VTX, which is powered through this port right here that says raw. So we're going to select 5 volts. So we're going to solder bridge these two connections on this side. Now these two connections on this side will be raw battery voltage, and we don't want that for our 5 volts. So, and because this has a 3 amp regulator in it, we don't need an external backpack like I've shown in my other videos. So now we got a solder bridge on that, and then the other one is the voltage for here, which we're not even going to use these pins, but if you're a Spectrum guy, this is where you pull your 3.3 volts. So you basically, here, there is, this side is 5 volts and this side is VBAT. Now when we put our transmitter on there, so that's for this line right here, which is the transmitter. That's for this line right here, which is for the transmitter generally. But we're going to use, for cleaner mounting, we're going to use over here. And I got everything upside down, right? So, anyway, let me put it back on. Okay, so this is right side up now. But basically, we're going to put our transmitter on the TX3 instead of the TX2 because we want a cleaner build. So the receiver will be a lot cleaner if it lays flat right here on this build. So, but if you're a Spectrum guy, you want to use this line because it does the 3 volts. So anyway, all right, I don't fly Spectrum anymore, but I definitely am intimately familiar with it. All right, so I'm going to bridge the 5 volt, and if you're Spectrum, bridge the 3 volt on this side. Oh boy. And you're being an ass. I made the other one look really easy. You gotta solder like you're not supposed to here, Ron. There we go. Got a nice solder bridge on there. Okay. So we're done with all that BS. All right. So this. All right. Now I can zoom back out a little bit. So that you can see those bridges. Maybe, perhaps it should focus this close. So you see here I bridged the 5 volt one, and here I bridged the 5 volt and 5 volt. So the one that says raw, I can't read it at this angle. This one says raw. It's for the VTX. Okay, so now that we did all those solder bridges, you see all the solder I use is a no clean flux, but you see all this like goop on there. So I'll take a alcohol wipe to mine now. So I just use a little alcohol on a paper towel and wipe that off, because I don't like extra flux on my board. I like a really clean build. And that stuff's sticky and it'll grab dirt and just bleh. Come on. This is the easiest time to clean it off too, when there's nothing soldered on it. Oh, and I did a kind of major boo-boo here on this. The first thing you should do with any flight controller is plug it into a computer before you solder pads on it, right? Because if you've started soldering on it and there's a problem with the board, they're not going to accept the board back. All right, so that's nice and clean now. Okay, so what's next on this build? All right, so I put that back on. I'm gonna set this aside. All right, so I'm gonna tin the ESCs as well. Now we're trying to keep weight down, so we don't want to tin. These ESCs have pads on both sides, and we don't want to tin both sides. And the direction that I'm going to use for up is this side clear. So these are the new Wraith ESCs, and they're the 32-bit ones. And the other ones that I like are the other ESCs that I'd highly recommend are the Icon SEFM 30 amp ESCs, the V3. So either one is probably a pretty good option. All right, I'm just curious to use these on a build for, you know, they're the new stuff, right? Like I need to test them, so especially on something that I really know well. So all right, so we're only going to tin one side of these, and we're going to find out. So one thing with ESCs, they have these devices on the, well, these, which are on the back. These are called FET gates. And you really don't want to get your ESCs too hot. These FET gates are extremely susceptible to ESD and overheat, and these are the most sensitive components that you have on probably in your entire like rig, right? Are these FET gates? They're turning the power on and off to your motors very, very quickly. So, but yeah, they're sensitive little butterflies, and we don't want to get them too hot. And you know, even though a large bit of current goes through them, yeah, like they're very sensitive. So okay, I'm going to continue tinning these guys. All right. So, and a couple things here. All right. So let me clean my tip off. I use a chisel tip. Can you see that? The chisel tip is the one with the flat edge on it. So like I get to put that nice big flat edge on the board to keep it. Yeah. I get to put that flat edge on there so I wet the tip, and then I put the wetted flat edge on there to distribute a lot of heat very, very quickly into the board. And that's the trick, right? You want, again, in and out, bank robbery. So there we go. I distribute it like that. That's it. That's tinned. And you'll see that my joint is still, see how the joint is still shiny there? That's because if they get dull and white and oxidized, that's a sign that your iron is too hot. The other thing is, when I touch my iron to there, like it doesn't like fizzle and just like burn it up immediately. You know when the iron's too hot when you're working with it for quite a while. Like the solder will just like poof, when you touch it to the tip, and that's way too hot. So you don't want to get the solder too hot, or you just get nasty joints. Again, I'm going to take my paper towel with a little alcohol on it and That's the one I just did. I should probably do that one last. And wipe off the excess solder flux that's on there, so they don't get sticky icky. Alright, and one thing I just realized, because I usually have ESCs that come with wire on this end at least, is that you're going to need some 16 gauge wire for the ESCs as well, that I did not list in there, and you're going to need some like 26 gauge wire for for these. So, alright, I forgot something, because if you get the Icon ESCs, you won't need the extra wire, but okay. Alright, let me grab some of that wire, and we'll put those on there now. Alright, so here's a little tidbit. So these are the Icon ESC. Well, here. Yeah, this is the Icon 30 amp ESC. This is my favorite ESC right now that I've flown. So this is kind of the like quick size comparison to the Wraith 35 amp ESCs. Now these are only 4S, but these will do 6S. So quick size comparison on those. And the other thing is, these actually come with this side of the wire on there. So if you get these ESCs, you don't need to worry about getting the extra wire that I'll put the link in for the description for these ESCs. But anyway, and I said 18 gauge earlier, but it's actually, I found some 18 gauge and was looking at it and was like, that's a little heavy. So, or sorry, I said 16 gauge earlier, and I think that's a little heavy. And then I did some quick back of the envelope calculations for 2 inches of it at 35 amps, and it's a little heavy. So we're gonna use an 18 gauge wire, which will save us a little bit of weight. But now I gotta find that. BRB. Alright, so I got my wire now, finally. Okay, so move this stuff out of here. Let's zoom out a little bit. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to cut strips of these. This is my 18 gauge wire, I believe. It says, yeah, it's 18 gauge wire. And basically the ESC is going to go about there. I think I'll cut myself a 2-inch strip to leave myself. I think that's about 2 inches. Yeah. So I'll make them all. Yeah, I'll make them. I'm going to cut a bunch of 2 inches of these. So 4 red, 4 black, and 2 inches. And then we'll strip them and we'll solder them on. So in my video I showed 2 sizes of strippers. I showed this stripper, which is a finer stripper, which isn't going to work on this wire and the main wire. And then this stripper, which will work on the larger gauge wires. So we'll find our little number here. These are 18 gauge wires, so we line it up with the 18 over here, which is this guy. We strip it off. So, and one of the key things to having clean builds is that strip, right? Is to get okay. So one of the key things to having clean builds is the strip, and to get the strip length correct. So when I lay this down on this board, I've done a lot of these. So when I lay it down on there, look, it's the same length as the pad. So I'll strip all of these to that length. So that's the length that I'm going for. I don't want it longer. I don't want it shorter. Now, if I strip one too long, what I'll do is I'll tin the wire first, and then after I've tinned the wire, I will use my side snips to trim it back a little bit. So once you start taking the jacketing off and you try and trim a little bit off, it's gonna like the wire just kind of goes everywhere and it becomes a mess to solder. So, pro tip: strip it, tin it, and then if you need to cut it back after you've tinned it. So, all right, I'm going to continue stripping all these. Alright, now I'm going to tin all of these, and part of that is, I don't generally use flux, but being as I'm thinking that this is probably for people that aren't as proficient as soldering as me, I'll use it for you, show you how to use it. So I just, I'll dip these into my little flux container here, and I'll set them aside, and then I'll go through the process of tinning them. And you don't need much flux. It's just enough. And what the flux does, so there's flux in the solder, and if you have your soldering iron set right, it's going to flow in there fine without the flux, but it burns off like nearly immediately when you start soldering. So that's what that smoke is the flux burning off. So, but this will help you flow solder a little bit easier. So these are my helping hands here, and basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this guy, and I'm going to clean the tip off. So let's zoom this. Well, let's leave it zoomed in. You're going to put this in the shot a little bit. No, not really. So there's a brass section in here that I'm dipping the tip into to get all the oxidized solder off of there. So then I'll tin the tip, and then I will just flow solder into my, so that's a tinned joint, right? The solder flowed right in there. So I'm gonna do all the rest of these, and alright, so you can see the mess that the flux is leaving on the table, my table here. And really, we don't want, yeah. So I'll wipe that off. The other thing is I'm going to wipe all the flux off of all of these guys here with my, alcohol paper towel again. So I use a lot of alcohol in electronics, and you can get the quick little alcohol wipes. I just find that this is the most cost-effective way to do it. Just, rip off a little piece of paper towel and soak it with some alcohol. Hey everybody, so that this doesn't become a 4-hour segment, I'm going to break it up into playlists, and I will link in the previous one and the next one here so that it's a little bit easier for you to follow along. I appreciate you watching to this point in the video. Please continue watching, hit that like, subscribe button, and leave your comments. Alright, love y'all.